going to bring back all our panelists now. So if you do have a question for any of our panelists, can you put it into the Q&A box at the bottom, or failing that, just put it in the chat and we'll pick it up there. And then we'll start the conversation. I want to start off. We had a question, and this is to anyone. They said they're aware. I think it's from Sunnylands Nursery. They're aware that they need to look after themselves and their staff, but they feel like they don't have the time. Is there any ideas for fitting in that kind of self-care within a busy schedule?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. There can be a perception in schools of well-being and self-care being something that has to be a bolt-on. There has to be something extra. So I did hear genuinely of a whole staff being asked to do Pilates on a Friday all together. Now, I'm sure Pilates is great. It's not my bag, and I'm not sure I'd want to see my aging head of department doing it. So there can be this perception of well-being as being something extra. So the one thing I would say is that well-being is actually, it's part of the job. So when you talk about teacher well-being is about feeling like you're doing a good job. Teachers want to work hard. Teachers are not lazy. There are very, very few lazy teachers I've met in my career. So part of it is just, that sense of doing a good job. The other thing that Deirdre was talking about as well is the small things. It's the thank you. It's the good morning. It's the someone got me a cup of tea. It's the someone got me a bar of chocolate. It's those really small things. But what I would say in terms of those extra self-care things, like, someone the other day was on Twitter saying, well, I don't have time to go have any exercise. I used to love exercising. Is if it matters enough, you can make time for it. So you can find a day a week where you leave at 4 o'clock, or you leave whenever your school finishes, you leave soon after those children. If it matters enough, you'll find time for it. And it comes back down to that ruthless compartmentalization, because let's not forget, this job's never finished. You could keep working forever and you'd never have the perfect lesson. So it's that ruthlessness as well.
I'm just going to hop in on that one as well. And it is a matter, as Emma says, of finding the time. We are very lucky that our senior leadership recognise that. But if you are the leader in the school, it's finding that time to cover somebody for half an hour for a bit of well-being. We have had physical well-being checks where we've had a pharmacist come in and do blood pressure and glucose levels and flu shots. But our senior management provided a sub that day, and everybody was relieved from their classroom to go off and do that if they wanted to. And even as a result of that, we discovered that one of our staff actually was showing signs of pre-diabetes, and he was able to get into his GP and stop that and, prevent a health problem from developing. So if the leadership's there to do it as a whole school and from top down, it might be a matter of paying a sub for a day, but you're investing in other people's well-being and the well-being of your school and your students.
I'll be bold, David, very small on that as well. I think there is a balance there of those discrete things that need to happen and that are additional in as much as they're our own time. It's that self-care element, but I think the simplicity of breathing techniques, of understanding how our mind and body work together. And I think I'm probably banging on about this a good bit, but it frustrates me that some of what we know about the neuroscience of literally how we work and how we tick isn't being shared with the people who could actually do something with that knowledge. So actually understanding the effects on our body and in turn on our brain of slowing our breathing, of actually feeling that, and that links into that whole thing about widening our circle of control. It changes, it literally frees us up to think, and it's no addition, it's not additional, we're doing it anyway, we've got to breathe, but it's how we breathe. That's huge. And I think on the Sunnylands piece in particular, the psychology of checking in and checking out, of actually asking a person before they're starting their day or as they're starting it, how they are, what they're bringing in with them, and as they're going out, what they're bringing out with them. Again, that's about cognition. It's about metacognition. When we say things out loud as people, we actually get the chance as a teacher to say, I haven't slept. We're already acknowledging that ourselves, and therefore we can see it. It's like we're teaching children that, to say, I see you, anger. I know that's what's driving me to behave in this way. then we can actually do something with that. So just allowing people those seconds or minutes to verbalize their emotions is part of containment. Those are some of the basic underpinnings of the psychology that's at work all day long in the school environment, and there's no real time in that, but it matters hugely, and it's exactly what we want to teach children to do. So we have to do it right up the chain. We have to check in with Louise and say, you know, how are you doing today? And as she's going, you know, well, as much as, you know, where your attention is now, anything, those things don't take time, but they're massively valuable in the psychology of how we get on with our day.
Brilliant. Nicole said just on the chat she was agreeing with the box ticking thing. How would someone influence the approach the mental health approach in a school, especially if they think it's not working well, or there's a lot of stubbornness maybe with management or resistance? How does that individual go about it? What steps can they take to change the kind of wider culture?
Like this is a really difficult one,
yeah, because
when you start speaking out and writing about teacher wellbeing, people come to you with their stories, and people have come to me with some eye-watering stories of, frankly, inhumanity. You know, someone being made to have a miscarriage at work because it wasn't seen as a valid reason for having time off. Someone else who was asked to come home from abroad before she could, or in the wake of her mother's funeral, because she'd had her allocated time off. And you do hear those inhumane stories, and they're rare, but they make me very angry, and there are enough of them to drive especially new teachers out of the profession. So I would say try to change things first, and the way you can try to, there are a number of things you can do. You can found, if there isn't one already, a staff wellbeing group. You know, and there are lots of models for it, and there's a real impetus coming from outside now that, you know, wellbeing and mental health policies in school now, I think we've tipped the 50%. More than 50% of schools have one. It's a big thing. So you could take in the research and say, we'd like to have a wellbeing group and do a staff survey with that wellbeing group, and then act on it. Small things, you know, do the small wins. So we're currently working on making sure there's a space in school where teachers can go and have a quiet moment to cry if they want to. Or eat chocolate or whatever, you know, just a quiet place that teachers can go to, or both. But what I would say is a lot of people make the mistake of staying in a toxic environment for year after year after year after year, thinking it's going to change. And if your work is having a consistently negative toll on your family life, your personal life, and your mental health over a period of weeks and months, go and find another school, because there are brilliant schools out there. And I know that sounds brutal, and I've hedged around that over the years, but now I'd be quite clear about that. Is if you've tried within reason to have those difficult, honest conversations, if maybe you've involved your union, if you've tried a wellbeing group, and those things are still falling on deaf ears, and you're still not feeling valued as a human being first and a teacher second, then find a school which will value you, because they're out there, you know, they're represented here, and there are a lot of them out there.
We have a question here. What about the time? It's from a leader in a school. What about the times when I'm exhausted, and yet I'm needed to be positive and rise to support a staff member? So if someone finds themselves in that, you were saying at the rock bottom, well, what are the first steps to take? Do you know, if it's gone too far, and you know, the breathing and all, it's kind of gone past the point. What do they do then? Yeah,
I'll let someone else speak in it. Education Support Partnership charity, teachers in the UK, they operate a 24/7 helpline. They can refer you directly for counselling. They're well used to this, and they are brilliant. They've helped me personally. I work with them as well now as an associate. So the Education Support Partnership are fantastic. Inspire in Northern Ireland is being recommended here as well. So really it's about asking for help, and different people will need that help in different forms. Coaching, there's a lot of coaching now, support around for head teachers, and I'm actually training to be a coach at the moment, and that power of having someone to talk to. But if you need to step away for a while and take some time out to be healthier in the long run, to do that self-care, then take that time. I'll let someone else speak, because I've been speaking for a long time.
Yeah, can I come in on that as well, David? I see it, and I see a connected question coming up. I think again, there's something here around the behaviours that we've all come to develop, and the expectations that we have of school leaders, of principals, and there's a shift here that I think we need to be making, and it's around enabling. And we have it there. We have it in our learning leaders. It's there in our strategies. So the environments in which a principal feels like they've got to be there, they've got to solve the problems, they've got to answer that. And not to be able to buffer that to say, I can't do that right now, because the reality is that you can't. And I think this is where the real tension comes, when we know, both as an individual person and as a professional, that we are not able, that we are not contained, that we cannot think, that we can't offer the solutions. We have to be honest about that. Trying to push through that space to do it anyway is not going to deliver the results. And in fact, where we can create environments where we're enabling leaders, and we're asking the staff in our schools, and whether teaching or non-teaching staff, to come to us to think solutions and to bring their solutions forward, where we're acknowledging and recognising their leadership no matter what their role in the school is. We start to change the environments in which their expectations are that there are problems and they all come to the principal. Principals are employees as well. They might be the highest up the ladder, but they're employees in that school as well. So it's thinking about ourselves, no matter where we are in that, and enabling leadership. It's not, and I see Emma saying, it's a lonely place to be. There's no doubt about that. I think there's a connected question in the Q&A there about sorry, let me be bold here, but yeah, another principal saying about totally stretched, out of sync, and trying to support staff and feeling stretched to capacities. I think one of the things that we've been talking a lot around mental health and emotional well-being are the healthy boundaries of responsibility. We are all responsible for our individual well-being and mental health. It doesn't become our employer's responsibility. The employer has responsibility to us in terms of the environment they create and the support they offer us in managing it. And one of the tools we've been using are the wellness action plans. So even in NCB, we've been asking our staff to do that. So, and there's a new version, again, I'll put it in the chat. I think it's Charlotte, the name of the trust just escapes me. But wellness action planning is about asking, whether that's our teachers, in our case, our employees, to identify those triggers, the types of things Emma talked about. What is it in our behaviours, in other people's behaviours, in our working environment and cultures that help us feel emotionally healthy, and what is it that pushes us over? And like that Amber exercise, what works for us, what can we do, and then what do we want or expect from our school leaders or our employers to help us manage that? But the responsibility for identifying those things rests with us as individuals. I'm going to stick it in the chat now, because they're really useful tools and exercises to think about completing as a staff team.
Just a comment from Shauna in the chat there. She said coaching is a very powerful way and would benefit all of us teachers and pupils. Principals would benefit from the support and space coaching brings as well. There was a question earlier about how, when you're teaching, how much you should be masking your own sort of anxieties, your mental health for pupils. Obviously, to be able to deliver support for pupils, you have to look after yourself, your self-care. What's the balance there? How do you manage that? How open can you be with pupils? Or do you have to be closed off? What's the kind of relationship there?
I'll just hop in on this one, David. We are very open as a school about mental health issues, and again, that is right across the board. We have a mental health team, or mental health council, I suppose, as Emma has said, where we have representatives from the Board of Governors, our non-teaching staff, teaching staff, and you can go to somebody there for help and coaching, but we are very much encouraged to say to a student, you know, if you're in the position to do so. I would very easily say, the last day I was here, I was so stressed, I wasn't coping very well. We're going to go over that again because I wasn't in the right frame of mind to do it. Anybody else feel like that today? Don't be afraid to go. We can self-refer to counsellors. Inspire is a great service for teachers. But we would model very much that, you know, if you're having a bad day, there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying, give me a wee minute here, just I need to pull myself together. I've had a bad, you know, a lesson class coming in, class going out. At the minute, we're moving between bubble classrooms, and I very often start my lesson by saying, just going to sit here, breathe, gather our thoughts, wee minute, where we're going, what we're doing. Right, okay, let's go. And if someone then feels they can come to you, and it's much easier for a child to approach a teacher to say they're having issues. Now, if you're having a serious mental health concern, obviously we have a very strong pastoral team for teachers that we can go to, but there's always somebody there to speak to, whether it's in your own school, somebody in your network, somebody from Inspire, somebody from Lifeline, whatever it happens to be. But we very much are keen on modelling, as I said from the start, mental health, physical health and relationships and support. The more open you are with students, the more we're going to change that mindset that when they are the adult, that they can go and seek help if they need it.
I would totally agree with what Louise just said. I mean, obviously, when it comes to serious mental health issues, the channels are there, the safeguarding's in place. But when it comes to, we talk a lot about in the mental health training we're doing at the moment about sometimes we pathologize what is in fact understandable, an understandable reaction. So a lot of us are suffering at the moment. A lot of us are feeling quite stressed. And I would simply echo that. I just remember a lesson with Year 11 a couple of years ago, when, you know, it was just one of those pulling teeth lessons and we were trying to get the GCSE results out of them and it was just a nightmare. And I got really frustrated with them, saw them the next day and I said to them, what was wrong with you yesterday? And I always remember one of my pupils turning around and saying, well, what was wrong with you, miss? And me having to stop and pause. And actually the empathy and the compassion and the kindness that young people can show can often far exceed that of adults. So yes, I'm not advocating sharing your messy divorce, but a bad day or a stressful moment is something that I wouldn't. And I thought the use of the word mask was interesting in the question. I wouldn't try to mask those ordinary, understandable strains.
There was a question here. I think it might be for Louise, but anyone can jump in about how does your mental health team actually function? Like how does it work as a group?
So our leader of our leader of all our mental health policies, sort of Mrs. Judith Mallon, has applied for a mental health status and award. And basically, as I say, we're quite lucky. We're a small school community, okay, and everybody's a Joe, whether you're a staff, student, building supervisor, canteen staff, whatever. We're all in the same boat. So everybody's kind of looking out for each other. There is a panel and a council that you go to, but if I had concern about a member of staff, we would just go and say, are you okay? Are you having a bad day? And if you had a concern you couldn't address, if you weren't close to the person, you can see the mental health council team, any team member that you're comfortable speaking to. And those were picked deliberately so they represent everybody and everybody has sort of a relationship with someone. And you can approach that person to say, can't cope, won't cope, worried about. And they have policies and procedures that they would follow through. And I'm sure anybody who, if they wanted any help, could contact. If you tweet me and I'll put you in contact with Judith. And if anybody wants to start one, I'm sure that would be, you know, should be glad to help someone through it. But we're just lucky that we are a small school and we're a small network of people that have each other. You know, we actually had a conversation in the staff room today about how are we all coping, because we can't all be in the staff room at once and there's staggered breaks and staggered lunches and keeping distance. And it is a matter of going and saying to somebody, you're doing a good job. You haven't been out of your room today. Do you need a cup of tea? And then that person, we're because we've modelled it for so long, I suppose, it's easier to approach somebody. But it's having someone there that everybody can relate to is the starting point, I suppose, before you even form the council.
We had a comment there from Audrey. She said, Louise has mentioned your own network. As a principal of a small school, my support network with other neighbouring principals is invaluable. We're open and honest with each other, and a problem shared is a problem to have. So I suppose it's also finding possibly people in those leadership roles. Maybe it's that kind of lonely at the top thing. It's finding other people that you can chat to and can kind of compare notes in a way.
Yeah, we're talking to principals about something similar recently, David, and saying, you know, particularly in this arena where a principal's email, if they ever even get time to open them, literally have thousands of pieces of information coming in to them to be able to decipher what is priority for somebody else, or never mind for you, whether that is public health, you know, notification, it's messaging, it's it's an offer to come to something like this. It's absolutely impossible. And all of that is corroding that professional sense of self that we were talking about. And something similar happened in a totally different context with social work. About 10, 20 years ago, when around child protection issues, we started to strengthen so much of the regulations around social work that what we actually did was take away exactly, and both Louise and Emma have talked about the parallels here, exactly what we're trying to teach children in that context to do, to trust their gut. When a child's belly tells them that something doesn't feel right, they're 100% right. They know. We can do all of the schemes and teach them, but something that we have, trying to teach them to trust that feeling in their belly that it's right or it's not right. And I think teachers, especially teaching principals, and I see the comments from nursery teachers, and I know I've worked in nurseries, and the non-contact time doesn't exist. And you have staff who only work the morning or only work the afternoons. There's no such thing as a team meeting, because your full team are never employed at the same time. And so they come on their own time. And so you begin to offer your own time. So there's something happening there in that environment where I think that suggestion from Audrey that you actually reach out as other principals to each other. It's the line of mothers. It's hold on to folks here to say, hang on a minute, nobody knows your school like you. Nobody in that 1,000 emails has a clue what St. Joseph's Coalisland looks like, as well as Mr. McNeil knows what it looks like. They don't know the children in your school. Do you know at the gate every day and what they've come from that morning, what medals they need to have got to the gate? Never mind. So there is something that, because anxiety is contagious, and there is no doubt that sense of fear around doing the wrong thing here in this environment is spreading. But confidence and hope are hugely contagious as well. They really are, because again, it's the way we're wired. So the more principals like Audrey, or the more teachers like Louise that say, yeah, I'll tell you what I'm doing and I'll give it a go and I'll send you the stuff. And that's happening. It's happening with Blenda and I. It's happening in 100 teachers nearly sitting here on a teach meet at 9 o'clock at night. So it really is sometimes, again, as back to, like we said, children's live so small places close to home. That's exactly what fires are. We talk about fire in the neurons. That's how it works. So there's loads of written stuff and there's loads of written resources, but literally doing what you're doing now will have as big an impact and bigger. It is just about creating that positive space. And I know when you're exhausted and all the rest of it, but I think listening and hearing some of the energy that's there, my boss, Celine McStravick, our director, in another similar environment, we were talking and somebody said, but the system, and she turned around and said, listen, we are the system. If you go home and I go home and there is no walls, and it was really challenging, and thought actually it's also really exciting. It actually is. This is us. We're here. It's you that are in schools now, and in the kind of environment that you're creating here with each other. Big things are possible here, and big things to children are a smile and a hug. And in the schools, and I know in my school they get a hug, and I'm glad they get it. So that's the stuff that matters. It really is.
It was funny. Last night we ran a session on blended learning, and there was the word collaboration came up again and again and again. And I feel like that word works here as mental health as well. A lot of the time the feeling is it's on you. But thinking of it collaboratively, and as Audrey was saying, working with other principals, it kind of shares the problem a little bit. Okay, so I just wanted to bring up as well, in terms of parents. So the children obviously going home and they're part of another sort of social circle in their family. Where do parents come in, and where does family and the life outside of school, how does that come into it from a teacher's point of view, do you think?
I don't mind coming in on this one. It's something we've been talking about a lot this week, actually, within our school and in the wider region where I work. And what seems to be happening with parents and with children is that almost this honeymoon period is wearing off. So the first few weeks back at school, they were brilliant. Everyone was brilliant. Staff were amazing. Children were really well behaved. Great. Parents were grateful to have teachers. But it does feel as if here, at least, the cracks are starting to show. And what's happening with parents is that well, we can no longer assume anything. We couldn't anyway. We couldn't assume anything about social background and children's experiences, but we especially can't now. And what we're getting is parents coming to schools. I mean, what Louise was saying about laptops was really powerful, because, you know, we've had families without pens or paper, so we've been delivering pens and paper. So those inequalities have been exposed, but also we've had parents who've never asked for help before now coming to schools and saying, I've lost my job. You know, I'm no longer working. We can't afford, it costs over £300 for my daughter's school uniform. You know, we had to go into an overdraft for it, and we're both professionals. And people coming and saying we can't afford the uniform, and what the effect on the children in the classroom is that, I suppose those, and I'm not a psychologist, so I'm sure Deirdre will put it, but those adults, those infallible adults at home who they saw in the evenings, they've now been with them 24/7. And they've seen the cracks. So there's no longer that safe. So their teachers disappeared overnight, just disappeared. Their school disappeared. And then the adults they've been at home with have been shown to be imperfect and scared and anxious and everything else. So I think there are all the implications of that to think about as well.
We're slowly running out of time. I was wondering, just if anyone has any last minute questions, firing through, but I thought I would just open it up to the three of you. Was there any final thoughts you had after the discussions tonight you want to share with everyone? Putting you on the spot. Okay.
I'll pop in, David, and just reiterate what you said there about collaboration. It is collaboration for mental health is a different form of collaboration, but it's there. There are so many professionals out there who are willing to help, whether it's modelling something like a wellbeing council, loads of links there that people have supported in the chat. But reach out to help, whether it's with technology, whether it's with mental health, whether it's a different area of well-being. If it's something you're struggling with, just go and ask for the help. Technology wise, there's nearly too much out there at the minute, but there's lots of Northern Ireland based groups that can share curriculum with you, can share technology with you, and can give you ideas for supporting parents, supporting students, and working on whatever is on your school development plan.
I suppose I'm just thinking, you know, hearing everybody and seeing the questions is really useful, and like I say, yes, there's specialisms, but one of the things that always frustrates me is that we can create a sense of things being so specialist or such a high tier of either knowledge or need that they're pushed further away from children and families and teachers who are the day-to-day people. And we think of nurseries and daycares even, that's where children are and young children are most of the time. So to me, it's not been afraid of acquiring some of that knowledge, and there's great stuff out there where you can do that in bite-sized ways, but it's still good quality information for yourself about mental health and well-being. Because we worked with a woman there, really interesting woman, Pauline Burns. She's actually a lead allied health professional in Scotland, who's seconded into the government to look at how they worked very broadly in child health. But when they looked at the children who had severe emotional and mental health problems, and they looked at those children in their system, and they looked at their CAMs and everything, and they started to see where their referrals were, where their pathways were, and they're so complicated, and there were so many referral systems that a child had to get through. And they took a kind of slice, if you like, out of this and said, okay, let's look at them and see what's happening, who these children are, what the profile. But what they actually, you know, those unintentional findings, when you start to look at something, what they actually discovered was that so many of the children didn't actually go on to need or receive a specialist service at all. The numbers were huge. I'd be quoting it wrong if I said it was 70% or it was 40. I can't remember. I'd have to go and look and see what that was. But it was a huge number of those children and families who were satisfied by reassurance. And in her own words were, and we made them wait for it. You know, that's the damning thing about thinking. So again, that taps into that I said at the start about having, you know, compassion or confidence in yourself as well, courage and curiosity. So often it's reassurance. It literally is that containment and a bit of reciprocity in how we are with people, to hear them, to listen to them, and let them verbalize and therefore think of it themselves. So not undermining reassurance to ourselves, to, you know, kind thoughts and words and action to ourselves and the people and children that we meet every day. It's not underestimating that, because often that's what people need to reset their own wee compass and go again the next day and get up and out of the house, whether there's a pen or paper in it or not. And if schools feel like less stressful and environments and more a warm, you know, there's stuff there about school as the emotional base, if that feels like the brick mother, then that, you know, our job is well done here. We want to get children in and out of here with their self-esteem intact and be a bit kinder to ourselves about our expectations needing to be bigger or greater or more specialist than that.
Oh, I can't beat that. That's brilliant. The brick mother. I think that's wonderful.
That's not mine. I think that's a very famous phrase, but I think it's really useful to think of.
Wonderful. I would just say support in every direction. And I realised that what I said earlier might have sounded a bit harsh about toxic environments. And just to point out that our school leaders are incredibly vulnerable. They were already, according to recent research, some of the most vulnerable to the various symptoms of stress and burnout. So if you're not a principal, go to see a principal tomorrow and ask them how they're doing. Take some chocolate. It will be appreciated. They might not have time to talk to you for very long, but I promise you it will be appreciated. Check in on your principal tomorrow.
Great advice. So I think we're just running out of time. So just a reminder that this session will be available to watch on the BBC Northern Ireland YouTube channel just over the next couple of days, and we'll try and include as many of the links that people have mentioned tonight and organisations there as well. This is the first time we've run these kind of teach meets. This is our third night out of 4. So we would love to get your feedback, anything at all, as we hopefully shape these type of events in the future. So our email is learningni@bbc.co.uk. So learningni@bbc.co.uk. So please send through any feedback you have. But for tonight, a huge thank you to our panelists tonight, Dr. Emma Kell, Deirdre McAliskey, and Louise Kerr. And a big thank you for all watching and for getting involved tonight with all your questions. We'll see you tomorrow at 7:30. Thanks very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.